Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the AUD podcast channel. I'm your host, Khaled Abul-Jubain. We are honored to have Mr. Cosmin Manea as our guest on the show today. Cosmin is an AUD alumni, serial entrepreneur, and angel investor focusing on investing in sustainable businesses. He was previously one of the founding partners of InstaShop, renowned as one of the region's greatest success stories, before selling the company to Delivery Hero for a whopping $360 million back in 2020. In this episode, you'll learn about the untold InstaShop story, the harsh realities of entrepreneurship, when is the right time to exit a company, and the importance of confidence in everything you do. Please join me in welcoming to the show Mr. Cosmin Manea.
Thank you so much. It's great being here.
Welcome back. You were telling us just now that you haven't been back in a couple of years, and I wanted to kind of start the conversation just reflecting back on like your time here at AUD. What do you remember? What are the fond memories from one alumni to another? And it's funny, we even said that we've probably run past each other at certain points, which is crazy that we never got the chance to like sit and meet like this, but here we are all these years later, and we can pick it up from there. So yeah, tell us about your story, about your time at AUD.
Yeah, I mean, it was today I actually came and you told me that I'm allowed to enter inside the building, and
how did that feel?
It felt surreal because it was the last time I probably went here, it was walking, as a student, sure. And now I was able to come with my car and come inside. It felt, I don't know, walking down the memory lane when I came inside. I was here between 2008 and 2012. That's when I graduated. And this building that we are in right now, it was not there. So a lot of changes. But yeah, I got a lot of, flash memories, like coming to class, seeing a few of the students going to their class, the cafeteria. I used to be in the football team, so I used to spend a lot of time in
here,
AUD,
yeah, for sure.
And very beautiful memories. I mean, probably the university years are probably the best everyone remembers from their yeah, so that's one of the things that I will tell to the current students, like, enjoy life. Like, it has to be a balance between definitely, studying. I don't want to say anything wrong that teachers will jump on me.
We promote studying, guys.
Yeah, for sure. But it's definitely a balance between, make friends, enjoy university life, whatever that has to give you. I remember I used to be very active in clubs, used to be part of the football team. So yeah, I really took in the whole AUD nights. I hope you're still called the Knights, no? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Nothing changed there. So yeah, I mean, very happy memories being back here.
Yeah, and one thing, listening to even the way you were talking about it, there was like a smile on your face, and you're like, oh, that story from that place, it's just like flashbacks all the time. One of the things that I tell people that was special for me about my AUD experience is the people I met at AUD are now, till now, like 15 years later, some of my closest friends. And I would imagine it was the same for you.
Definitely. For me, it's even more than that because my wife is from AUD.
So you kept it? Okay.
So I really got in touch with my, AUD friends. Most of my friends are from AUD. I actually left Dubai in 2020. So now, I went back to Romania, where I'm from. But yeah, I had a lot of friends. My wife, I was in B building. My wife was A building. Probably a typical story between B and A.
How did you guys even meet? Because A building was that mysterious place that no one, exactly, only a few people knew about.
You were scared to go as a B student.
Exactly. Yeah.
We actually met through a common friend at the time. So yeah, how you have group of friends. So that's how it happened.
That's awesome, man. Well, that's a really, really cool story. And I wanted to kind of bring back to, your story and the work that you've done. And so, guys, for the people who don't know, I'm going to give a little bit of a spoiler alert. So, Cosmin was one of the founding partners of InstaShop. And I think I speak on behalf of myself and everyone in Dubai to say thank you. You have made our lives so much easier. I use InstaShop minimum one to two times a week. It's not even... It's like a part of my life, which is crazy. And so when they told me, you're like, oh, we have a great guest for the show, and I'm like, he's the founding partner of InstaShop. I'm like, oh my God, I have to just sit with this guy and tell him thank you. He made my life so much better. But before we're gonna get into the whole InstaShop story in a little bit, but I wanted to kind of take a step back first, because looking at your experience, you've invested in multiple companies, lots of different startups, and it seems like from the outset that you've always wanted to be an entrepreneur from day one. Was that always the case, or was it just once you graduated, you didn't find maybe something that you or like a career path that was interesting to you, so you're like, okay, I'm just going to try to figure this out myself?
I mean, in a way it was there, but it wasn't that clear, the path.
Okay.
So why I'm saying it was there, because I remember conversations with my dad, which probably a lot of us had when we were 16, 17, before
for sure.
going to uni. And
Yeah.
my dad is an engineer, so he was always pushing for me to be an engineer. And I remember telling him no, I want to have my own company. I want to wake up at 10 a.m. I don't want to go to work very early, and I don't want to be an engineer and stuff like that. And to be honest, I ended up in B building out of kind of elimination of okay, I'm not an A student, I mean A building, I'm not an engineer. So by elimination, it was business. That's how it happened that I ended up in business, with the combination of thinking that I want to have my own company. But while I was in AUD and right after, it wasn't that strong, the dream of doing something like that. So I did follow the career of, trying to work in a multinational.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I did work for 1 year. I did an internship program with Philips Electronics for a year, which I got it here from AUD from the career fair. So
that's awesome.
I went to the career fair, I applied, and I did the whole grinding part of it. And I was there for 1 year, and actually that experience of working in a multinational helped me to understand that, hey, this is not really what I want.
Okay.
And maybe I'm jumping a bit here, but then as a timeline, after 1 year, I went back to Europe. I did a master's, and in the master's, it was very focused on entrepreneurship. It was IE Business School in Madrid. And that's when I realized, okay, 100%, this is what I want to do. And then so far in my life, at least, I realized that once you set your target in your career, opportunities come,
Mm-hmm.
and that's actually very strong from an energy point of view, let's say,
Sure.
I said that I want to work in a startup, and that's what happened. I actually got a message from John, which is the founder of InstaShop, but at the time it was a different company that he was working on, and we were friends. We met in Philips. That's how I met him. And he messaged me, and he's like, hey, I know you're doing this master's, when are you graduating? Do you want to join me? It's a startup. And that's how life is, so my mindset was there. So I said, yes, for sure, I will join you,
Yeah.
And I will go back to that story a bit later.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely want to hear about that entire story. But one thing you said was, once you have some type of goal, it'll give you direction and maybe give you some idea of what choices you should be making in order to, to get to that goal. And so it's interesting to me that before it was like you saying it was always there, and then but after the IE program, it really it gave you that, I guess, clarity that this is for sure what I want to do. What was it, I guess, that you took away from that program that was that switch that just changed everything?
It was a combination of things. One is that in the program they had an entrepreneurship club and a whole ecosystem where startups were students were pushed to try to do a startup and things like that. Yeah, they have, I think it was called Area 51. It sounded very cool, like in awesome. The movies, where they had people that will help you to set up a company. They will even have a VC night, I think once a month, where you pitch to actual VCs. So it was very focused, the program, on entrepreneurship. So that helped to give me the comfort of understanding, hey, this is doable, because I used to go there with some friends, have coffee, see what other guys are doing, and then once you sit next to a founder and you realize hey, he's just a person like you, he came up with an idea, he's working hard on it, it's doable. It's not like you break that barrier of thinking this is so hard to do, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one thing. The other thing was a lot of the students that were in my class, they were actually founders, and they were like very young, like 21, 22. And
oh, really? Okay.
not necessarily successful founders, but they were founders, you know.
They
so
were trying.
They were trying, and a lot of them were coming from like, oh, I tried this startup and I did this and I did that. And then once you surround yourself with a certain type of people, and that's another lesson that I took so far in life, is that try to understand what you want to do and then surround yourself with those type of people, and then you realize this is the new normal and you can do it yourself. And then I took active decisions. Like, for example, I was like 1 month away from graduation, and a lot of my classmates were applying for jobs in multinationals. And I took the decision of not applying, because I said that I don't want to apply, get a good offer, and then be in the decision of like, do I take the offer or not?
Oh, you didn't want that choice?
I didn't want that choice, because I knew that I want to do something in the startup. So then I was looking in the startup segment, you know, try to apply for startups and stuff like that. So I was really, my mindset was like, I need to work in startups.
Yeah. So so that's interesting, because I was wondering why after you graduated that you wanted to focus on the startup side more than the multinational side, but it makes a lot of sense now. Given your experience, I think we have to, I like to bring reality to situations. So I think over the last maybe 10, 15 years, especially with shows like Shark Tank, like all this kind of stuff, there's been a very massive push towards entrepreneurship. You know, you saying you're an entrepreneur comes with, in a way now, that like badge of honor that, wow, you are special in some way, you know, because you're trying to do this. But what I've learned in my experience, so for example, I have my own podcast consulting business. So I help companies and brands launch podcasts. And that's kind of how this whole thing started with AUD initially. But what I learned in my first year, which was last year, is that because I thought as a solopreneur it would be easier then, because you know you don't have like salaries to manage, you don't have, you know, boards, you don't have investors, all that kind of stuff. But I found out very quickly that it comes with its own, there's some similar challenges, but it comes with its own world of challenges. So the question I wanted to ask is, do you think, and you've gone through that experience a couple of times, people underestimate the difficulty of entrepreneurship?
100%. At least most of the people, they do that because of, in a way, the media and the stories, because usually the stories that surface are those successful ones, and then they only see a tiny fragment, as in like, oh, you know, this person did this, launched this business, and then sold the company for 100 million, you know? Then they go into entrepreneurship thinking that it's something very quick. Oh, I can do it. I just need a good business idea and it's done deal. In reality, it's not like that. And here I'm going to add like a small story from InstaShop, is that when we started InstaShop, there were already 2 applications in the market. And then I like to put this story in a very cute way, that we had the InstaShop color, which is like, you know, a reddish, pinkish, you know, I can give you the code of the color, but otherwise it's in between there. And we were that color. And when we launched, there was another app that was green color and another app that was red color. And the reason I'm telling them in colors is that basically we were doing the same thing, you know, like there was no major differential. You know, we used to say and think that, oh, we're different because you click the button to the right and they click the button to the left, but basically it was the same. Some grocery products, you click them, you add them to the basket, and you do checkout.
Yeah.
Along the 6 years that I was in InstaShop, from the launch to
let's just get into, we're here now. Why don't you just tell us the story? How did it even start, you know?
And just to answer that question, there was another 20, at least that I counted, other colors, other applications that were doing basically the same thing as InstaShop, just a different color, from yellow to purple to whatever you want.
Okay.
Why did InstaShop succeed to do an exit of 360 million to Delivery Hero? And besides InstaShop, there was only one application that did a way, way smaller exit. The other 20 died. The only difference is the team and the passion and the working of every single day and the grinding and everything like that. So this, to answer your question of like, is it easy? It's not about the business idea. It's not about being the first in the market. We are not the first in the market. We are not that different in terms of the business idea, because everyone else was doing it, and more or less it was 99% the same concept. The only difference was the team, you know, the day to day, and then I will go into details of the execution and stuff like that. So that's what I will tell to people that want to be entrepreneurs and want to start. They need to understand that every day it's a set of decisions. It's a set of a lot of up and downs, and it's a lot of hard work. If that's for you, then great, go change the world and launch something. If that's not for you and it's just the beautiful dream of getting rich, then if you start like that, then probably you're in the wrong segment. Like look into, I don't know, cryptocurrency or something else. I don't know. But yeah, that's probably for a different podcast.
Yeah, no, but I think so many things that you just said are things that not only I've gone through, but that people I think forget is, I love how you phrased it, is making a certain set of decisions every day. For example, I compare myself, for example, with like my wife, who has a job. She's a social media account manager, in a massive agency, and it's interesting how in my world I have to create my path, and in hers it's set. And I think that is, from my experience, that's the biggest struggle. It's that every day is like, okay, today is, what do I have to do to move this along? What do I have to do to make a business? Is it making more content? Is it making that one phone call? You know what I mean? And every day you're just trying things until you figure out that one thing that works. And what I've learned is you have to be patient, because you never know. Like things I was talking, like we're having this conversation now. If you spoke to me 3 months ago, I might be giving you a completely different answer. So that is something that I, for example, find like the biggest struggle. Do you resonate with that? You've been nodding along with me. You're like, yeah, it sounds familiar.
No, a lot. I mean, this is where for me, I got the difference between working in big companies and working in a startup or launching a company. The difference between following a path that's already set and kind of just implementing strategies and things like that, and the daily working hard and A/B testing, and the reason I like the second part is that I also like the rewarding part of it, and I don't know if you get that thrill
once you get that thing that works.
Exactly. Once you discover what works and you actually see your customers, or you see implementing that with your clients, that's when it gives you so much satisfaction that it's worth all that hard work. And for me, that's the roller coaster of entrepreneurship that I enjoy much more than a day-to-day routine job. So that's what I'm saying. I think here it's about the character of each person, to try to understand, is that something you're looking for? Then that's for you. Otherwise, maybe it's better to look into something else.
Yeah, no, for sure. And and me and her have these kind of conversations. She's like, I couldn't do what you do. She, from just a personality perspective, she's like, I need the structure. I like I like the security, whatever. I don't think I could take that kind of, I think there's also a risk element that you need to be prepared to take. Okay, let me ask you this question. When you, like in any venture, any founder is gonna, you're trying something new, you're trying to make something successful, but failure is a very real option and it can happen. So in my mind, for example, right now, from a mental perspective, I'm like, that failure would be, half of me could accept it, the other half would find it very painful. So from your experience, because I know, for example, you had one of your earlier companies was Unveiled, and you had, that experience didn't work out. I'd love to hear that story, but it sounds to me like it was like an early version of TikTok in a way. It was content creation, making videos and stuff. I'm like, that right? Is that what it was?
That's yeah. It was basically a social network for voice. It started. This is all John, the founder. It started from the idea that you had Twitter, which was a social network for text, and there was no social network for voice. You had Instagram, which was for pictures and content at the time, because it was only pictures at the time. So that was Unveiled, and in Unveiled, I had no big role. I was just kind of an employee. I was I think a designation was growth hacker, so I was trying to grow the app and the exposure of it, but that's definitely a story through, I think, the whole team, John and the other co-founder of InstaShop, Ioana. They learned a lot, but it is one of those stories where you tried and then it failed. But the other thing is that once you try something and you're inside the startup, you put your everything. It's kind of like your, a lot of entrepreneurs probably would say this, that it's like your baby. So you don't give up, you keep trying, thinking that, okay, tomorrow is going to be the turning point. And it wasn't, but that led to InstaShop.
Exactly.
So they're very much connected, you know.
100%.
So John was the whole team was struggling with the project of Vound, and then he realized that okay, I need to do something else, and he's a core entrepreneur as well. And then he said, okay, you know, he came up with the idea of InstaShop, and he told us, which was like 4 people in the team. From tomorrow we're moving to this other project. We drop everything about Vound, and that was somewhere like May 2015. And him and Ioana, which are friends from childhood, they know each other for a long time. They're the 2 co-founders. And that's when I discussed with John, and I told him, okay, yeah, that sounds great, but I want to have a more active role. And that's where like I discussed with him, and I became like number 3 in the company. And I said, okay, I'll come to Dubai. And for a long period of time, it was just me and John in Dubai. Ioana was not present physically in Dubai, but she was helping us from Greece. And just to finish this story now, because I'm kind of laying out the team of InstaShop at the beginning, the 4th person that stayed with us and as importance was actually Ingrid, which is my wife.
Oh, no way.
And she's from AUD as well. And there in the founding team members, there's another person, Altamash, is also from AUD. So there's a strong AUD in the founding team of InstaShop.
Awesome. That's a great story.
And that to show, because InstaShop actually, even Vound in the early times, I remember Vound came to AUD to, you know, poach talent and try to look for students. And also InstaShop later on, and that's where Altamash came into place. He actually applied through. But what I'm trying to say with this is that, you know, students that are listening to us, that they should be active into, you know, joining these career fairs or looking out and stuff like that. And later on, I want to actually mention on the point of opportunity, because there are a lot of employees early on in InstaShop that did not see the opportunity of a startup and left because they found it too hard or things like that. And in life, there are many times that opportunities come and they're in front of you. And if you're not ready mentally or whatever to take it, you're going to miss that opportunity, you know? So yeah, that's another important lesson.
For sure. It's what I took away from that story is John was with the whole Vound experience. What I find interesting, or what I find that I think an area that I would struggle, is how easily he was able to make that shift, you know, like mentally, because like you said, it's like your baby. So Vound was one baby, InstaShop is a completely, you know, new baby, and it was very easy for him, it sounds like, to just be like, all right, that's not working out, let's, you know, just focus on this. And I think that trait of, and being able to like not be too emotionally invested is probably one of the biggest challenges that a lot of entrepreneurs face, you know, because opportunities, like you said, might come at you. And if you're not ready for that, if it's something that could maybe grow the business, but are you scared to bring more people in? Do you trust them? Or do you want to do it in your own way, in your own time? There's all these different things that you have to take into consideration.
There's always this balance between when to let go. And that's tricky for entrepreneurs, because sometimes they get so invested, like we were saying, that is like their baby, that they might miss the right point of saying this is not working. Exactly. And that's also important, because not every idea is meant to be a business, and that's what people need to understand. They sound good on paper, and they might make sense on paper, but it might not mean that it's going to transform into a business, actual business. And it sounds like it was easy, but it was definitely not easy for John. I mean, he can say that for himself, but I know the times it was not an easy decision, but it was a survival decision. It was it reached the point that we realized that, okay, Vound is not working and we need to shift to something new. And this was an upcoming market with the whole idea of online grocery and things like that. And then we shifted to InstaShop, and you know, it wasn't easy at the beginning, but there was way more traction in InstaShop at the beginning, so it gave us way more hope than Vound did.
You got that, what's the word they call it, like, you know, the feedback from the market that was what you guys were looking for. And I think it's so important in entrepreneurship, in whatever you're trying to build, in whatever way, that sometimes you want the big win, you know, you want to close that massive deal, But if you just got like that one little, a small one, just, you know, it's that thing, those little ones, just to keep me going. You know what I mean? Just to give me that, like, oh, okay, fine. Like, there is some hope, you know? And I think that is something that, you know, a lot of entrepreneurs, you know, probably feel too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even for us, like for even like around 3 years, we never thought or realized of like what we were building. It was just a day-to-day working hard, and the satisfaction was coming from the day-to-day. It wasn't working thinking that in 7 years from now or whatever, we're going to sell the company for I don't know how much money, or it was not that mentality. We were just very young and hungry for doing this, and because of that it allowed a lot of flexibility in a lot of areas. Like, you know, we used to have very small salaries for ourselves. We had basically almost no social life for like 3.5 years.
Yeah,
we used to work 7 days a week, and I think this is where made the difference between InstaShop color and the other colors, like I was saying earlier. You know, the dedication and the hard work of the team. Like literally we used to work 7 days a week, from like 7 a.m. to like 11 p.m.
Wow.
Like it was a non-stop 3 years of doing that. Then we managed to grow the team, and then we got a bit of a break. But all of that, if you do that from the thinking of, you know, oh, I want to be rich and I want to make it big, you're gonna get tired. But if you do it from a day-to-day satisfaction of like, look, customers are getting this, they're using the hard work, I come with an idea today and tomorrow customers are happy, that type of satisfaction will get you going for a long period of time.
Exactly. Yeah, that's such a, man, it's so funny listening to your experience, because I've been going through that, you know, myself as well. So that feeling is very very close to home, very familiar. So we've kind of got an idea of the InstaShop story, you know, why you guys started, the early years, you know, and what was going on. Now, this is a question that I've asked someone previously on my own podcast, because you guys sold the company to Delivery Hero for $360 million. Now, I'm trying to put myself, I'm like in Cosmin's position, in your position. I'm like, what would I have been thinking? What was he going through his head at that time when that something like that, an offer like that comes in? Because you're like, half of this is how I would look at it. I'm like, one side, I'm like, that's a lot of money, that's great. And the other half of me thinks like, if you're willing to pay that much for it, that must mean that there might be more here for me if I continue. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that is, that conflict internally and probably and also emotionally is going to come into that decision. So when it came to the sale, because it sounds like from the beginning you mentioned you guys were never planning to build this to just sell it off. You were just focused on, all right, we want to make this better every single day. That's the goal. We want to make this the best app. So how did all that, like the end of it, how the whole sale experience, you know, come in? What were you guys thinking? What were the conversations? Because I think that's an area that is not talked about enough, in my opinion.
That is true, and we actually had that moment, I think 3, 4, or even 5 times along the history of InstaShop. I remember one of the first one was with one of the partners, like retail partners, very early on. I think they were very smart from their point of view of realizing that we're probably really good as a team. But they realized that probably before we did. Mm-hmm. And they actually kind of made an offer or wanted to buy us really early on. And that was the first moment when you were very, you know, taking off your balance, because we're like just a few people working, you know, in the living room or in a small office. And then we're like, oh, okay, you know, how come there's an offer? And, you know, that took us by surprise at the beginning. And but luckily we realized that, okay, that's not the right decision. We said no, you know, and then we continued. And then there was another kind of, you know, discussion in that direction, and we kept saying no. The reason probably it started making sense with Delivery Hero is that it was a global player, and it was kind of, I mean, probably one of the top 2 that can, you know, purchase us, and at a big valuation. And it was a series of events that happened that I think led to the sale, which was definitely combined with the pandemic. For us, the pandemic as a business helped us. Obviously, we don't want the pandemic, but for us, it helped us as a business because, people were stuck at home. All of a sudden, everyone was forced to order, and we were, in a way, I use the word luckily, but luckily, it's you make your own luck, and that's my view in life. And we are very well positioned in the market to take this growth.
Exactly.
And we did that, and I think the negotiation with them started a bit early before the pandemic, and then it ended up during the pandemic. Like a sale like this usually takes around 12 months from day one to actually signing the paper, so it's a long period of time. And I think it was a balance of a lot of things. There were people in the team that I think wanted to continue on our own, and there were people that wanted to sell. So it was a balance of things. But in the end, it was obviously also John's decision. He was number one in the company, and I think it was the right decision.
Did you want to sell it at the time? Were you happy to do it?
For me personally,
Okay.
It was because it was for me also. It was a decision of it was time for me to move to my next project, personally as Cosmin, and there were a few personal matters. I at the time I already had a kid, like a small baby, and for me it was the time that I kind of did my best to InstaShop. I was reaching also kind of a plateau from a professional point of view because I kind of did everything I could do in the company.
You didn't see any more like growth for you?
I mean, my next step, when I even discussed that with John, my next step was to be CEO, but I couldn't be CEO because, obviously John is the founder and he wanted to be there and he had to be there. There was no next position on the ladder for me, and I was just I know how to do the market. I launched 5 countries with the help of the team, so it was a bit of a professional plateau that I had to move to the next project. So
well, it sounds like from the way you're talking about it, you're looking at all the factors, you were very comfortable with that decision. And I think now, this was 2020, we're in 2024 now. Wow. That you probably in hindsight now reflect back and reconfirms that that was the right move, because now it opened me up to do all these kind of things. So now that we got the InstaShop story, I know you're also an investor in other companies. I know and this is an area that I wanted to really dive into, because I find I like speaking to investors to see how do they analyze things, So, shows like Shark Tank, Dragon's Den, whatever, I think are great because even for me personally, I always learn. It's nice to see those kind of conversations. But I know for you, it's just like the environment and sustainability is something that, you're passionate about. And, over the last few months, we've had some amazing conversations with people on the podcast all about this kind of stuff. So, but I wanted to focus on the investment aspect for now. So how would you, I guess, describe yourself as an investor? And is there a difference between like an angel investor? Are there other types of, investment classes? That is an unknown world to me. So why don't you give us, just an insight into all of that?
Definitely. First thing is that I'm also quite new to the whole investment part, and it's a learning curve for me as well. And I can already see that learning curve with some companies that I invested that are doing good, but some that are not doing that good. So it's definitely a learning curve for everyone, just like everything. Just to categorize a bit, the idea of investment is that usually the most traditional way is that you start a company usually with your own money. And I'm talking now the traditional startups, usually based on technology or something like that. You start with your own money, you come up with a bit of an MVP or an idea that works and has some numbers, and you can show something to some investors. Angel investors basically are people that are much more easily approachable because there's not much of a due diligence, there's not much of a process there, like usually come through connections and things like that. And then an angel investor will usually give a certain small amount of money just to get you going to the next few months to prove a bit your model, and then start going into the more institution or venture capital firms or type of companies and systems that will need a due diligence, which means to look really deep dive into the company and stuff like that. and then bigger and whatever, or raise money from the bank and stuff like that, depending on the project. So that's kind of the big categories. Then there's the crowdfunding, where you go on one of these crowdfunding platforms and you get 200-300 bucks from different people, and you put all together and it becomes 50,000, 100, whatever you need. So these are the different categories. There's advantages and disadvantages to all of them and stuff like that. That's kind of the whole picture, just to get an idea. Now, me personally,
and just sorry to interrupt you on the crowdfunding one. So just because I'm not familiar with it, so I know people, like lots of different people invest into it, and I have to hit my target, and if it goes over, it converts. Is that am I giving that away for a certain percentage of the company? Like, let's say I need to raise $100,000. And let's say 20,000 people, put in money, and that's how we break our thing. So and that is valued at 10%. Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Is that kind of how it works? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There are two types of crowdfunding. One is on equity, is called. So then you give a percentage for money, and then there are the other ones where usually work for companies that produce a product or a service. And then they don't give percentages, they just give kind of gifts or whatever.
Sure,
give me $500 and I give you my bench. Basically, they're your customers that help you to grow at a higher price at the beginning and stuff like that, but there's no equity usually exchange there. So these are the two big type of crowdfunding.
Gotcha.
And the crowdfunding that you were saying about percentage, they usually form what is called an SPV. So basically, all those 20,000 people or 500 people, they come together as a one entity.
Exactly.
Because then it becomes very messy from a financial point of view and managing point of view to manage 20,000 people with.
Yeah. You want it all at one place.
Yeah, they become stakeholders in the company.
Exactly.
So yeah. Now going back to me and together with Ingrid, my wife, we are angel investors mainly in the idea of like investing in projects that have a certain impact on society, and a lot on projects that have an element of sustainability. And the reason we're doing that is that also as people, and this started even within InstaShop, we realized like, okay, we need to find ways to live in a world that is kind of, full cycle sustainable. Not that, we produce something and then it's not biodegradable, and then the whole world runs out of resources that we cannot get back, and the whole story of, global warming and sustainability and stuff like that. In a beautiful ideal world is that we have a house, we have solar panels, I charge my electrical car. The electrical car, the batteries are not made from products that are, damaging the earth. And then you have a full cycle, I can, fully recycle that car and whatever. That would be an ideal world. We're not there, but we're going in the right direction.
Sure.
And I realized, but I didn't realize that very early on, which was an interesting story, is that when I exit InstaShop, because obviously it was in the media and the exit and stuff like that, I started being approached by a lot of, friends, other friends, not friends, whatever, messaging me, I have this idea, I want to do this. So it was a big hype of like, let's invest here, let's do that. And at the beginning, I was kind of going with the flow, whatever made sense, as in like obviously financially and the team and stuff. And then I'll discuss about what I'm looking at in a startup when I invest. But then I took a step back and I realized like, wait, I have a role as an investor in society as well. So like the same way a consumer has a role to try to put pressure into buying products that are more organic, sustainable, better for the planet, better for them, for their health. The same way a business has a role to produce more sustainable product and so on and so forth. And the same role is to the investor. Because if I put all my money, and all the other investors put their money into, oil companies just because they give a better return and I'm only looking for the for-profit, then I'm basically part of the problem. So I realized like, okay, let me not be part of the problem. Let me find a solution. So then I said, okay, me and the likes of others that whenever I talk with other investors, I try to push them to go in the direction of like our money matters in the market the same way it matters as a consumer and the same way it matters as a business owner. So since then it's been like almost 2 years that we had this strong shift that we only look at companies that are in this space of having an impact of society or having an element of sustainability. And even in companies that I don't invest, when they come and they send me their pitch deck, I tell them that it's not normal in 2024 now to send a pitch deck and to not have one slide about how your company is sustainable. Now, people might understand wrong that they think, oh, sustainable project means we do solar panels. No, you can do whatever product you do in the market that's needed that can have a positive impact or can be more sustainable. For example, again, because impact doesn't mean only sustainability, it means trying to make the life better for people, but in the real terms, not to click 3 times less online than 5 times, because people think that they're doing something there, but that's a bit, not to use weird words. So for example, I was discussing with someone in Romania, which was the head of people that have a certain problem in terms of disabilities or challenges in life. And he was telling me that usually companies don't look at them, as a segment, as a market, or they don't adjust their products to them and stuff like that. And I realized that that's a very simple way of, for example, just to give you an example, like let's say you launch an e-commerce platform, okay? Sure. And your e-commerce platform at the checkout, or while I scroll through the e-commerce, maybe it has an option to work for blind people, for deaf people, for whatever, which is a simple 2-day technical solution from your technical team. And then all of a sudden you target a certain segment. That can be in UAE, I don't know how many people are there. In Europe, I don't know how many people. So I'm trying to say it can be also a smart business decision, because all of a sudden you can be the differentiator in the market and be like, okay, I have a problem. Where can I, buy my products online through my disabilities? And that's an impact. You're helping a certain segment of the market. Yeah. And these are the type of things that I want startups to think about. Do your business if you think this is a need. But you can always look left and right and understand, okay, how can my business really help someone that needs help? How can my business be sustainable? How can have an impact on society? And that's what we've been focusing in the past 2 years.
Okay, so that's the areas of the you're focused on projects that you feel make an impact in the world. It doesn't necessarily have to be from an environmental sustainability standpoint, but whatever I'm making, if there's a way I can tailor it to make it better and help people, then that's what the goal should be. And it seems that you would look out for founders or teams that have that ethos, within them. Like, yes, we're doing this product, but because the end result is this is going to make someone's life better. This is going to make it help. So I know you're involved with there's Burger Index and there's EcoTree. 2 very different, companies, 2 very different approaches. The Burger Index one I thought was really, really cool. But I'd love to hear from you. What was the reason that you invested in those 2? Because I think that will give me an insight into how you look at, investments or potential investments. I understand, for example, in the with EcoTree, very clear, makes a lot of sense. It's about sustainability, about all that. But Burger Index was on, I'm like, this is interesting. So would love to hear from you, your approach and why you thought those 2 were good companies to invest in.
Yeah, I mean, before I answer that question is that when we're discussing about, type of startups and the type of business that people come up with, I really like to see in the founders the idea of that they come with a product that they really think that can help in the market, and it's not only for profit. Because the moment like I hear in the first 2 minutes of a pitch saying that this is the market size and we can be this big and whatever, that for me it's already a kind of a no. It's already kind of a negative thing, because you cannot come from a position of telling me how big is the market to give me a big number to try to impress me, because all the markets that people kind of launch businesses are like, $10 billion and $50 billion market and whatever. Great. I don't care about that, because the reality is that if you do a business that's actually needed and you find a product that someone actually needs, then the money will come. It's the other way around. Don't chase the money. Don't go like, sometimes that happens. Great. Okay, you chase the money and that happens. But that's a bit more rare usually. And you're going for the wrong reason and you're going to fail most of the time. And also me, I'm not the type that invests in that. Now, Burger Index is actually one of the first one that I invested in And it was not on the radar of the whole impact and sustainability aspect. The Burger Index happened that, like I told you at the beginning, it came through a recommendation, because that's kind of how you reach angel investors. So it came through a recommendation from IE Business School. The founder, he was in IE as well. He's kind of a serial entrepreneur. He did a startup before. I really liked the team, and I really believed in the product. Now they are shifting as well because of discussions into an aspect where they're looking to make the product be more sustainable and be more efficient and things like that. So what they basically do is that they gather all the data that is online, and online means from like Google, TripAdvisor, all the platforms and things like that, and they put it in a nice format for companies to use that data. They work with mainly retailers in the food sectors, and they are in a way managing to make the decision making for these companies much faster, and faster can mean more sustainable, because these companies, for example, can take a decision in a 5 hour looking at the analysis from Burger Index, instead of having 2 weeks a team of consulting in their office and stuff like that, which from a CO2 point of view, 2 weeks of a team being there is definitely more than 5 hours of them getting data from a platform. So stuff like that, But Burger Index was not there, but it is with all the companies that I invested before I made this shift. That's why I told you every company can try to be more sustainable and have an approach in which they position themselves as sustainable, and not for the sake of saying, oh, we're sustainable, we use recycled paper when we print our invoices. That's not enough, like something more than that. So yeah.
Sure. And I think, it's very interesting how Burger Index is also shifting into, adding that sustainability aspect to that, which I think is really, really cool. The concept for me is amazing. When I looked into it and like looking at the platform, whatever, I'm not in the food industry, but if I was, I'm like, it seems like I would want to use this. You know what I mean? That's the impression that I got. It's like, it seems like a very useful tool. And I know with EcoTree, it's about sharing waste management, so making it easier for people to collect. Because I had people on the podcast here and they were talking about how one of the biggest challenges in a lot of places is that there's a big supply, let's say, of recyclable material, but there's not enough like centers to do it. So you end up with like another problem of, pollution and so on. But so what I've learned from you today, Cosmin, is that your approach to not, I think, just business, but, personally, is you're trying to help people in whatever way you can, whether that's through a platform, whether that's, sitting down with this podcast, and you were very kind to even say, like, if people wanted to reach out to you, you just want to give back. And I think learning from people who have, and I think it's more valuable, or maybe it will resonate more, learning from someone who's not too far ahead of you. You know what I mean? So if I'm like a student now here at University of AUD and I'm like 19, 20, speaking to someone who's like my age or like our age, like in the 30s, be like, oh, okay, he's ahead of me, but he's not that far. So what he went through is probably will resonate more with what I'm about to go through, compared to reading, for example, a book from someone who's 60. Not that the wisdom in that is priceless, but this is much more catered to, what I'm looking for. And one thing you talked about was confidence and the importance to have confidence and to believe in what you're doing, and because that's what's going to get you through, the tough days that we've talked about. So I have 2 questions for you. Number one, how would you, now if I'm asking you on my Cosmin, how would you define confidence, number one? And then number 2, at what point for you were you like, in your journey, you're like, all right, now I'm confident? Because I'm sure I don't think it was at the sale. I think it would have happened way earlier than that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a very good question. I never thought how to define confidence, but I'm going to keep talking until the definition comes into my mind.
That's what we like to do.
Yeah, just to add something from InstaShop, I was, my designation was founding partner because I was basically involved in a lot of departments and tried to help the company and things like that. But day to day, I was the head of business development, so my job was to launch the retailers, the supermarkets, and later on restaurants and stuff that you see in the platform. I'm connecting that story with confidence because I remember it took me a bit of time to kind of get out of my chair literally in the office and go out there and have meeting, and John was definitely good at pushing me to do that. And I think it was a question of a bit of a confidence at the time. And what happened is that I am the type of guy that is very willing to try stuff. So I'm very, and I think positive. And I went out there in the meeting, and my confidence level in my head is always of like, what's the worst case that can happen? And then once I answered that in my head, which is never nothing bad. What can bad happen from a meeting? They say no,
exactly,
there's nothing. Then you really go down on the ground and you really walk differently in the meeting. You go like, okay, so there's nothing really bad that can come out of this. And then you shift automatically in the other direction where you walk in with a lot of confidence and you go like, okay, I can do this, And I actually heard someone say this, but unfortunately I don't remember who to give them credit. But instead of saying, you can do this and do that typical push that people say, ask yourself, can you do this? Because if you ask yourself, then you actually answer that question, and you answer that question with like, yes, I can do this because I prepare for this meeting. Yes, I know the product I'm selling. Yes, I'm a guy that is quite smart and wants to launch a product, whatever. And then once you answer that into your mind, you start building yourself with confidence instead of just the small effect of 10 seconds of like, I can do this. And then after 10 seconds, you deflate and, So give yourself reasons and answer yourself in your mind, can you do this, whatever it is that you want to do. And in InstaShop for me is that after I went to the first meeting and then the second, then I realized like, okay, I can definitely do this. And then the confidence just built up on that and continued. And then obviously then it's just a wave that you ride, and it makes sense. And it was actually tricky for me. Like I say all of these things, so I also apply myself to the segment of people even in AUD that, for example, for me, I was coming from Romania. I had no cultural background with the Middle East. I wasn't speaking Arabic. I wasn't speaking any other language. And most of the people that I was working with from a sales point of view, as in like my partners in the market, were from, Kerala, from India, from Pakistan, from, they're Arabs. So it was tricky to sell to someone that you're not culturally there, even though I was in Dubai for 5 years, so I knew the region and things like that. But they always used to look at me weird, like a random guy from Romania, trying to come with an idea. And there were a lot of barriers for me to go through. But I never gave up. There were moments that I used to, stay in a meeting with a very basic, tiny baklava supermarket. And that was even 2 years later, like, InstaShop already was having traction and stuff. And, the owner of the baklava was like, yeah, I'm coming in half an hour, and he will come 3 hours later. And, and I had to play his game. I had to be there. I had to do that, and I was there. I was with him. I was waiting. I was, begging with, putting that in brackets, and it worked, like I had to play the game. I learned the game, and we ensure that we signed all the main partners and stuff like that. So going back to your question about confidence, for me, confidence is so crucial, especially for entrepreneurs, but in general in life. And I tried that to pass on that to, I have 2 girls, and I'm trying to pass that to my kids, that it's very important to have strength in yourself and to know that basically you control your own life. And once you look at things from just your perspective and try to diminish this like panic and image of like the world is scary, the world is big, or going to a meeting with a big partner is scary or whatever, and you realize these are just one-to-one people like you, and you ask yourself the questions I said earlier, I think you can build up your confidence. And it's very interesting that you asked me that question, because I also find it a crucial point in your life, not only career, because confidence has to do with the way you are with your partner, the way you raise your kids, the way you look at life, and a lot of things. And I see that in life, like people with low self-esteem get to suffer, even though on paper sometimes they're actually smarter and better equipped than other people, just because someone comes with a stronger confidence. And confidence does kind of rule the world if you look at it. So it's important to find a way to be confident, definitely not arrogant. Like find the balance between the two.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. First of all, I love hearing, you know, people's stories and how they got to not just where they are now from let's say career perspective, but from a personal perspective, because, you know, through your journey, through my journey, everyone goes through so many waves and ups and downs. And when it comes to confidence, I've watched so many podcasts, you know, read books about it, even listening to, you know, the way you describe it. It all comes down to one thing. I think there's like stages to it. So you have to first internally, like you said, ask yourself those tough questions and have those answers, so you know, so that if someone says it's, oh yeah, but I know that, you know, you preparing ahead of time for those kind of things can act as a nice little like barrier, number one. And number two, though, the only way it sounds like you truly gain confidence is when you're tested. You know, when, like you said, all that knowledge that you had, that first meeting, after the first meeting 1, meeting 2, you know, those are the ones you're like, that's the proof that I know what I'm doing, and what I'm doing is working as well. So yes, there's a mental thing that you have to go through for sure. And the second point is you have to just do it. And if you're struggling with part 1, part 2 is probably the fastest way to fix part 1. You know, the action. I think that's the biggest thing that we all lack as people. Like I've read, let's say I've read 5 books in the last like month and a half. Okay, there's so much knowledge, and it's like, okay, now I have to apply it. So you apply, you know, bits and pieces, but you know you have to, if you applied like 3 times more, it would be, you know, even better. But that's the area I think that we all struggle with, whether it's for your business, whether it's personally. It's not the idea, it's the execution. It's all just, even with content creation, with whatever you're trying to do, is just Nike, just do it. You just have to do it. There's no other option.
No, I mean, I would like to add something to what you said, which makes a lot of sense, is that the idea of, like, you know, when you have to do something and is that very frightening moment of like, I cannot do this, you know, I will mess up this meeting, I will mess up this whatever, and you're scared, but then you go out there and you realize it was okay. That happens so many times, and it still happens. It's, I don't know, and like, even, I don't know, like,
it's normal.
It's normal.
Yeah,
and what I want to
absolutely
add to that, to people, one thing that really clicked for me is that to realize that everyone goes through those feelings. So once you put the whole world into the idea of like, you make it equal to you, and you go like, everyone feels the same way like you, there's no difference, then you start becoming from a relationship of one-to-one. You don't have that scare of like, I am scared, but this person that walks on the street next to me is not scared, because look at him, he's so confident and he knows his stuff, and he's going to that meeting and he's going to be better than me. No, trust me, he's as scared as you are. So once you see things from that perspective, that we are all as scared, then you relax a bit, you know. That's 100%. Number one. And the second thing I wanted to add with confidence is that I think it will help if all of us try to complement each other more. It's going in a different direction, but like, I realize this, like, once you surround yourself with people that are very open to just compliment and say, hey, you know, have a great day, wow, you look great, wow, this, that, great job on this, it builds a better community, and then that builds confidence, because there's a lot of people out there that need to hear this type of comments.
Sure.
And will make their day, and a few of people that will do that, then they can build the confidence in some people. So
100%, man, 100%. I just have I love the example, you know, the example that you gave, and like you said, I think we do need to complement each other more. I think it's a net positive, you know, for everyone. Yeah, there's no bad that can come of it, so it's kind of like, you know, why not? And your advice of remembering that everyone's going through the same thing. Everyone feels these things, whether he's 20, 30, 40, 50. Everyone feels it in their own way. They manage it in their own way as well. I wanted to just finalize our conversation today, man. This has been so much fun. It's very refreshing to hear from someone, and it's something that happened quite recently. So I'm getting, you know, the top, the fresh, you know, all the juice. our message with this podcast is to show that success comes in many forms and learning never stops. You know, you are one of our esteemed guests, just like the others we've had, and everyone has their own story of how they got to where they got. Everyone had their own lessons that they had to learn, the failures and so on. But in my opinion, like, the reason I asked this question is because in my life it's happened to me that there was one thing that I learned that completely changed my life and opened up, you know, that was like the key to open up the door to this whole new life, which was accountability. Learning that lesson of accountability changed everything for me. So I like to ask people, I know throughout your experience you probably learned a million things, but if there was one that really you feel like you'd like to pass on to someone as, you know, what would you say?
Very, very good question. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I agree with you that it's a constant learning, and it's one of those things that the more you learn, the more you realize there's to learn. So you
very true.
Yeah, you start, you know, in your probably, you know, 20s or 18, 19 with this confidence. Sometimes you have this confidence of like, you know, the whole world is at your feet, and that's probably what most of the students feel, and that's great. Build on that. But it's weird that, you know, at the time where you basically don't know much, you have more confidence and this feeling of like, I know everything than now when we're 30s, and probably different when we're going to be 40s or 50s.
For sure.
So it is a constant learning out there. I mean, one of the biggest learning that I got through InstaShop, which still sometimes looks surreal when you talk about these numbers and where InstaShop reached and Delivery Hero and stuff like that, is definitely that it's doable, you know, but it's doable, like we were saying earlier, that, you know, work with passion on something that you think it's needed in the market and you want to do. And put your head in the ground and work day to day and focus on that. And then one day you're going to, you know, raise your head and look up and realize that, wow, I've built something, you know, all my work in the past returns to something. So I think that's very important for people to be down to earth and to focus on what they can control instead of looking at this very, you know, shooting stars and stuff like that and saying like, oh, I want to do this quickly, and I don't know what. Confidence is something, again, that, you know, definitely I will add it again with the previous discussion, that I learned in a way how to be more confident, and I learned that basically everything is doable, you know. You come a bit scared out of university of like, what can I do, what can I not do, stuff like that. And to that I will add that focus on searching for what you're kind of passionate about. I mean, that sounds very, you know, Instagrammable and stuff like that, like search for your dream. But like, indeed, try to find, now what you like doesn't mean you like to play the guitar and you like to paint. Great. If you're an artist or you're going in that segment, that's amazing, because we need artists in this world. But
for sure.
But for example, for me, I realized that I want to go into the startup segment. You know, that was narrow enough for me to then follow up, and that built up my passion into work. And I used to, for example, just to express that feeling, like I used to wake up every morning with such a passion to work for 14 hours. Now, just take a second and understand that, you know. So you need to find something like that wakes you up in the morning and you're willing to do 14 hours to really put into that passion. If you're there, then great. If you're not there, then continue searching. And it doesn't have to be startups. It can be multinational, it can be whatever. But wake up with that pleasure of doing something, because basically you're working 8 to 10 hours is the most of your day you dedicate into something. If you do it into something you don't like, you're wasting a bit of your time, you know. That's number one. Number two, now I'm moving into kind of giving some advice to students. Sure. Number two, I feel like from the moment you graduate to, like, let's say you hit close to 30 mark, focus on experience as a job and don't focus on money. A lot of people make that mistake, that go like, oh, quickly I get this job because it pays more, whatever. No, get the job where you can learn more, where you can get more experience, And I financially, like I really struggled for like a long period of time after graduating, but I didn't see it as a problem. I didn't have a wife, I didn't have kids, I didn't have anything. Like, and I wasn't very into like I need quickly to drive. I don't know what fancy car, and I don't know. And if you're not like that, then it helps. Look for the experience, because in your first year of forming yourself professionally, if you look for having a proper mentor to help you, your manager or whatever, when you are end of your 20s, your 30s, that's when you're really going to jump ladders compared to the people that are chasing the career path quickly. Oh, look, I'm a manager. Great for you, but if the learning is not there, then it's a bit useless. And then I mean, now to conclude with the students, it's very important to like, you know, really take in the whole university experience. And especially, I mean, I loved my experience in AUD and everything that I had to offer. And enjoy that. You know, studying is definitely important, but for me it's a combination of studying and experience in terms of, you know, friends and how to, you know, building up a company is not only about 1 + 1 = 2 from the books. It's about, you know, networking, understanding how life works, be part of clubs, go to events, do different things. You know, it's a combination of life.
Exactly.
So that's more or less it.
Man. I think all the points you mentioned are stuff that we've all experienced. I can also, you know, attest that I had a great time here, you know, at AUD, many fond memories. I learned a lot. But like you said, and I think in both of our cases, life experience is what changed me the most. You know, that moving to living in Amsterdam for 3 years, that experience of, you know, finding a new job there and working with multinationals and startups, all of that is what has allowed me, or is why I am where I am today. Just like with everything that happened with InstaShop is why you're in the position that you are in today. So I think it's a nice reminder to, when it comes to the passion side, it's not about it, you know, just, I think one thing that I read once that I try to apply to my life that is difficult, that is just a game. All of this is just a game. I love games. I love playing games. So why not turn life into a game? You know, Today's game is, I have to get a client. Okay, you know, just that it's such a subtle shift, but sometimes, you know, that's all you need for it to, you know, completely change everything. Cosmin, I wanted to say thank you so much, man, for coming on the show. This has been such a fun conversation. As a solopreneur in my own journey, there's a lot of things that you talked about that I resonate with, and, you know, that I've learned a lot from you today. And I think any students, any potential entrepreneurs, anyone who's just interested in, I guess, just improving their life and going to that next level can take a lot away from this conversation. So thank you so much for your time, man. It's been a pleasure. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to be back in AUD. And like I was saying at the beginning, I feel like, you know, students can take a lot from this experience, in the idea that I put myself in their shoes. And I used to be very active in trying to go to any events that AUD will offer with people that I can learn from. So if I can give that back, I would love to. And that's why I said, like, if there's any student out there that wants more, that feel like they have some question or something, they can always maybe reach out to you and get my email address.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll put it in the show notes. Yeah,
then, you know, it's very nice to help one another. And especially, you know, I like the idea of community. So AUD and the alumni can be a community, and it is a community. So thank you so much for having me here, and hope we're going to see each other more often.
For sure. This is the first of many. Thank you so much, man. It was a pleasure, and we'll see you again next time.
See you.
Easy. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the AUD podcast channel. We really hope that you enjoyed it and learned something from it. We have a lot of incredible guests lined up for you on the show, and we're so excited to bring you their inspiring stories. To stay up to date with all the latest episode releases, please make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the podcast on the AUD Instagram page at AUD Dubai.